Welcome back to Inside Criminal Minds, the series dedicated to analyzing the actions of the elite BAU team. If you're new to the series, there's a link in the description down below to catch you up. This episode begins with a family scared to death being dropped off at a dock, waiting for someone to help when they see a car speed towards them, and really, they're gonna speed towards the people that they're trying to protect because, as we see, it is the person that's trying to help her. This is John Summers, who is a CIA agent tasked to keep this family safe. And he does so by putting them in a undisclosed location. But when John gets home, he gets ambushed, tortured, they break his neck, and then the team tries to make it a suicide by using a shotgun in the mouth. But even the lowest of the low pathologists, the dumbest coroners, would know that even if you were depressed, you wouldn't give yourself this level of torture or be able to snap your own neck and then shoot yourself with a shotgun. One of those just does not add up. But anyway, they leave a suicide note, and after that ordeal, we get to the BAU, where it's revealed Gideon knows John and calls another friend who just so happens to be John's boss. Gideon then meets with John's boss, or Bruno, Hawks, and during this meeting, Gideon refers to the last episode, which is a really nice touch. However, during the meeting, Gideon assumes that his friend wasn't suicidal, but Bruno wants to know who killed him and why, tasking Gideon and the team to find a mole in the CIA, which will make even less sense at the end of the episode. Gideon calls in the team to go over the information of this case. During this, we learn that the family from the first scene were fleeing an abusive father who is also a diplomat, giving him diplomatic immunity. The wife is Aliyah Nadir, with the husband being Hassan. She informed to the CIA about terrorist activities funded by Hassan, which sent Hassan over the edge, and to protect her, they faked her death, and a lot better than faking the suicide from John. Basically, they got into a car accident where the fire got so hot that they were unrecognizable. However, due to certain things, John believed that there was a mole in the operation, hence the secrecy of the first scene. We also know that the mole revealed secrets, forcing Hassan to investigate in the States. As the team arrive at the CIA, Reed tries to hand over his gun, but is told to keep it since they have jurisdiction in this investigation. Also, it is interesting that when Hotch goes through the X-ray, he is shown to have two guns, one on his hip, the other one on his leg. We learned about this second gun in a previous episode, so it was a nice attention to detail. However, it also seems like the production is running low on money because the CIA headquarters looks a lot like the BAU. Basically just things in different spots. Hotch introduces himself to Bruno, where he introduces not just himself, Gina Sanchez, Kruger Spence, and Olivia Hopkins, who, if we know anything about this show, are going to be the main suspects for who the mole is. Back at the BAU, Garcia is upset that she can't go due to her background as a hacker, which in future seasons we learn a little bit more about. But she's not alone. She stays with JJ, who most likely can't go because, one, she's not actually a profiler, and two, she has connections to the media, which could get this story on the 6 o'clock news. Back at the CIA, Gideon delivers the profile to the team in order to help narrow down whoever the mole is and to gain a better understanding. This is when Garcia calls and shows the team a recorded video of Gideon talking with Summers, and Summers revealing a potential 4 people, alluding to the aforementioned agents being the prime suspects. Gina then confronts Gideon about his psych eval of her, upset because he took her out of service. However, this really doesn't go that far, maybe a little bit at the end. But anyway, Hotch then plays hardball with Bruno to hopefully gain some insight on how he lies or spins the truth. Meanwhile, Morgan and the rest of the team review the tape and confirm the 4 agents they need to interrogate. Kruger Spence is interesting because he is a genius a lot like Reed. He even shares part of his name, possibly to symbolize that he is smart, but not as smart as Reed. Olivia is the mother and spent time in the field with Kruger. Gina is very similar to Morgan in terms of athletic abilities, but also can speak foreign languages because of her job, which does leave Bruno, who served with Gideon in the military and is basically the big boss. Next, we see Aaliyah struggling with the limited resources because originally she was going to be supplied by John, who is unfortunately dead. Back at the CIA, Reed accidentally helps Kruger, who could possibly be the mole, by profiling Summers. Next, we see Gina talking with Morgan and showing him satellite footage of his house, and we kind of get that flirtatious vibe between the both of them. Next, we see Elle inquiring with Olivia about her life, and in this scene, Elle is uncharacteristically harsh to the point of it becoming uncomfortable. However, during this exchange, Bruno says they don't have rights, which is ridiculous. Even when you're a high treason criminal, you still have rights. But anyway, it is revealed that Olivia and Kruger are having an affair, and because of this, it drives a wedge in between Kruger and Olivia to the point where Olivia wanted to do some research on her own. She got really close to finding out who the mole was, and the mole breaks her neck. Elle shows Gideon Olivia's body, and Gideon uses this to profile the 3 remaining agents to see the reactions of the news. This is where I believe Gideon actually figured out who the mole is, but after the meeting, Gideon meets with Bruno, basically to debrief. Next, Gina blows up at Morgan because of the fact that both Hotch and Morgan were insinuating that she was the mole. This is when Garcia calls to inform them Kruger downloaded the virus that shielded Olivia's killer, pointing a big giant finger in his direction. Also, with his files being erased, he is the most likely candidate for the mole. But in any good mystery, it is never the one they explicitly point to. This is where Garcia is able to break into the CIA mainframe due to said virus. This is where they find out that John Summers himself requested his own evaluation, leading the team to believe that Summers told Gideon how to find Aaliyah in the interview. However, back at the hiding spot, Aaliyah leaves in order to find water, which does make sense in a few minutes. Back at the CIA, they rewatch the video in order to decode Summers' information. And with all of the geniuses at the CIA, we've got somebody who's got 190 plus IQ. They couldn't figure out she was in a shipping container this whole time. And I mean, Summers beat the symbolism over their head when it came to talking about boats and boxes. It just seems like that's where he would hide them. I don't understand how the most paranoid people don't think that their own guys are sending code to other people. Anyway, and of course, the mole hacks the conference room in order to find Aaliyah. Next, we see Aaliyah returning from getting water. This is where she finds Hassan holding her kids hostage, basically just to increase the tension. Back at the CIA, everyone is panicking because Hassan knows where the wife is. We also see Gideon writing on a sheet of paper, something that will be revealed by the end of the episode, but he then sends Gina with Morgan in order to find Aaliyah, with Gideon point blank saying that she is not the mole. Next, Hotch and Elle bring Kruger to the conference room. Yeah, we definitely know it's him. It can't be anybody else. Gideon then goes over the profile with Bruno, and this is kind of weird that Reed grabs the control of the satellite imaging from the person who has been working it this entire time. I don't understand why he couldn't just let her do the job that she gets paid to do and that she knows how to do. I know you're a genius, but we've seen in this episode and in future episodes that you are not that savvy when it comes to technology. In fact, in a later season, when everybody else gets iPads, you opt for folders. Just doesn't seem like your kind of forte. But of course, Reed finds them almost immediately. They also see that there are 4 heat signatures, not just 3, meaning that Hassan has found them. Anyway, Hassan threatens Aaliyah, and Morgan and Gina arrive at the shipping yard. Next, we see Hotch and Elle showing Kruger the scrap of paper Gideon gave them. And this scene is kind of weird. I guess they told him beforehand that he was being recorded in that room because he's acting like he's being interrogated when all that says on the piece of paper is, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Just, it's interesting that he acts the way he does. Morgan and Gina are kind of upset that they can't find Aaliyah, decide to finally call Reed, who is their eye in the sky, where to go to find Aaliyah. Again, that just doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you ask Reed, who has found Aaliyah and where she's hiding? But anyway, Morgan and Gina find Aaliyah, and Hassan believes that he is immune, but Morgan informs him that he's wrong. Just in time for Gina to cross Morgan, Bruno tells them to cut the feed and gives Gina the order to kill Hassan. And for the first little bit, you believe that she actually killed him because the recording has multiple gunshots. However, this isn't the case. Gina suspected it was Bruno, but had to be sure. Gideon then confronts Bruno, and Elle reveals the note. And yeah, all it says is, we know you're not the mole, we know it's Bruno, so why was he acting so weird in the conference room? Doesn't make any sense. However, Bruno relents on the fact that without Hassan, the team has no evidence to prove he is the mole. Basically until Reed reveals Hassan is still alive, and Gideon reveals why Bruno killed Olivia, because she was close to busting him by finding the payment from Hassan into his bank account. $20 million to rat out your country? I mean, I'm not going to say I would do it, but it's tempting. Bruno is then escorted out, basically to go to prison, and a small scene of levity kicks off when Garcia is looking for Prince William's phone number. Unfortunately, she doesn't get it, but I don't understand how the FBI doesn't have that phone number. I guess it's an international thing. I don't know. Then Reed inquires of why Bruno invited them to be investigating this case, which is a good point. Why would a guilty person bring some team in to prove that he's guilty? Gideon says that it was because he knew that Summer's death wasn't actually a suicide and that Bruno needed to know what Gideon knew, but that still doesn't make any sense because if he never invited Gideon and the team, they would have never figured out that he was guilty, and by the time they actually did find he was guilty, you have $20 million of Hassan's money. He would have just been in a non-extradition country millions of miles away. Again, makes absolutely no sense. I mean, I guess maybe Gina would have figured it out, but again, you have $20 million. You can disappear. And as they're leaving the CIA, Gina and Morgan flirt a little bit more. She even infers that she could potentially switch teams, but that never happens, even in the events of next season when they lose a person. This episode ends with Gideon reading the paper to find Bruno was in a car accident. Yeah, right. What a coincidence that he died in a car accident. And as you guys can tell, this episode is not my favorite episode. It takes away from the BAU's main focus. And I know, and I might have said this before, but season 1 of basically any show is gonna be a mixed bag of good and bad episodes, just because the director is trying to find their niche, their home for what they want to tell the story about. Especially in the next season, you'll see that this series kind of finds its audience. The story is kind of weird. It doesn't make that much sense. And for it to be the penultimate episode, especially with the next episode being very good, this episode just falls really flat. It's just a weird episode with even weirder motives. However, that's it for this episode. If you want to watch a spy confront a man who fired him, then tune in next week for part 1 of the finale of Burned Notice. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe.